Alright guys, so hi, welcome to the Q&A that I promised you last week that I'm doing today. So, this is my Pothos. We have named her Flurry because it's short for flourishing, and this was a gift from my roommate's mom about a year and a half ago, and as you can tell, she has gotten pretty long. And I'm outside on my balcony, so we're going to have to deal with the school bus noises and everything else. So, also if you've seen me talking about propagating pieces of my plant, this is the plant that I am usually referring to. I have a couple of questions that you guys gave me last week, which thank you for asking questions, because otherwise this would not be a Q&A, this would just be a watching me replant, repot this plant. Let's see. So, as you guys know that I talk a lot about creativity, and I think a big part of creating is just practicing and developing discipline and a routine to be able to kind of understand our own creativity. I don't think it's as difficult as we make it out to be. I think, if anything, it's fairly simple in terms of the simple fact that I think every single person has a measure of creativity, and that it's not something that certain people have and other people weren't born with it. It's definitely something that takes cultivation, but it's not impossible. And so it is easy in that respect that everybody is creative. So I'm just cutting off the yellow leaves. The soil looks really bad. It's like this is also an after effect of me going on vacation and overwatering. So I have no scientific words of what's happening here, like I did the last time with my monstera. I don't know what's happening. But I'm basically going to break up the soil around the roots and put it in this new pot that I bought from Home Depot. But let's get started with the questions. This is my first time doing the Q&A, so just bear with me. So my first question that I got from my friend was, what exactly is grant writing and how does it help? So I don't have the full definition of grant writing off the top of my head. Basically, you know what, I'm going to Google it because I want to give you the right information. So let's see. Because I know what it is, but I feel like I don't always explain it very well. Alright, so Google's definition of grant writing is the practice of completing an application for a financial grant provided by an institution such as a government department, corporation, foundation, or trust. So basically what I do is I help nonprofits. Grant writing is usually something that benefits a not-for-profit organization that doesn't work for profit. They basically exist to help the community and help people around them, and so grant writing is something that helps them raise the funds to continue doing what they do. For example, I worked for a local Boys and Girls Club, and many people are familiar with what a Boys and Girls Club does. They do after-school programs, they do tutoring, they do sports activities and things of that nature that don't always bring in a specific profit that keeps an organization running. And so as a grant writer, I will write an application for a specific after-school program that we offer. And I can write this to Bank of America Corporation that is giving out money for after-school programs, and I will basically write a proposal that details why we need the money, how the money would be beneficial, and how it would help the nonprofit continue doing what they do. And sometimes, just depending on the nonprofit, each grant is different, and foundation grants vary from corporate grants. So Bank of America would be a corporation, and some corporations will set aside money that they want to give out to nonprofits, I guess, to help. I think some, we're not going to get into that, but it's to help. And then, for example, there are foundations like the Moody Foundation, which is a foundation in Tulsa that basically gives money to nonprofits year-round. And so grant writing is literally writing a grant to help a nonprofit continue doing what they do, which is helping communities, helping youth, helping homelessness, helping sex trafficking victims. Like, nonprofits range in all sorts of different kinds of ways. There's arts nonprofits that are specifically for artistic things. There are STEM nonprofits that are helping young girls get into the STEM system to be able to make STEM more diverse, because STEM is lacking in diversity, not just in ethnicity but in gender as well. So it's really cool. I like working with nonprofits. I've been doing it for about 4 years, and I started in, now there's cicadas. So I started working with nonprofits right out of college, and actually that's where I started grant writing, was my senior year of college. And so I hope that sums up what grant writing is for you and how it helps. So the next question is, what makes a poem a good poem? So when I was younger, I thought a good poem was simply something that rhymed, and how wrong was I about that? But a good poem, I think, can be summed up in having poetic devices, which can be imagery, it's allusions with an A, not with an I, it is metaphors, similes. Like, for example, when we are taught similes in school, we're usually taught the line from Romeo and Juliet where Romeo compares Juliet to the sun, where he's like, Juliet is the sun, blah 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 blah, which is like a metaphor. But to say that Juliet is like the sun is a simile. So saying the trees, the green of the trees remind me, a good one would be, for example, writing a poem about someone's eyes and liking that person's green eyes to the color of evergreen trees. So imagery and illusion make a good poem. It helps when you can imagine what it is the writer is reading, and also I think a good poem makes you feel something. I think bad poetry can make you feel something. For me, it makes me feel annoyance, but in the terms of a good emotion, poetry reminds you, I think, of what is beautiful in the world, what is painful in the world, and it makes you feel something that makes you want to, it evokes something in you that pushes you to be better, that pushes you to understand the things around you that you don't always understand. I mean, I read John Keats, for example, who writes about love, and he writes about beauty and nature and death, and his poems speak to the larger things of life that we find ourselves always trying to understand but never really fully understanding. The same thing with Rudy Francisco, who writes about love as well, but the Black experience and what that is like to experience certain aspects of life that many people don't understand. And so what makes a poem a good poem is a poem that makes you feel something, that is written with poetic devices, that is written well, and is not just rhyming, which is a poetic device, but there are a lot of poems that rhyme that suck. So you can tell that it's ready to be repotted by the roots, which is actually pretty cool. So I hope that answers your question about poetry. So the next question is, how do I stick to my plans? I get unmotivated to follow through with set plans. So I used to be the queen of procrastination. I am still working on being less of a procrastinator. I think one of the things that helps you stick to your plan is discipline. I would say setting small goals and sticking to those goals will help you eventually stick to larger goals. So for example, when I want to be more effective in my time, I think waking up earlier sometimes helps me do that. So I'll set an alarm for 7 and I will make a list, usually the night before, sometimes in the morning, but try to do it the night before. And I will start with 3 small goals, which is drink water, read my Bible and pray, and stretch. And sometimes completing something that I can mark off of a list helps me feel motivated to try to complete a longer list, if that makes sense. I think sticking to plans really does boil down to discipline, which is kind of like, I would say it's not hard to do, but it just requires you being intentional with your time. If you know that you get distracted with the internet, like I do, or you get distracted with Instagram and YouTube, which is the internet, then put your phone in a different room, or move into different sections of your house that would help you. Sometimes I work at my dining room table, sometimes I work at the desk in my room, and honestly for me, motivation typically depends on my mood, so how am I feeling in a specific morning. And I think when you feel unmotivated and you feel like you can't stick to the plans that you make, I think for me what is helpful is assessing how I'm feeling and why I'm feeling that way, because sometimes my motivation comes from my feelings of I don't feel like doing this, or I don't feel capable of doing this today, I feel tired, or I feel that my priorities are kind of mixed up. And I remember I was doing an internship and I had a coworker at the time who was saying to make a list and then basically separate from what is priority, so what is most urgent, and then what comes second to that and what comes third, and to make a list based off of your most urgent things that you need to get done, what comes second, and then what comes third. And I think that is something that helps. For example, as a freelancer in grant writing, usually grant writing is the top priority. So if I need to write a grant, that's obviously the first thing on my list. Social media planning would be second on my list, and then third would be writing a paragraph in my novel or writing a poem, just to like exercise writing for the day. And so it's really determining what is most important and then what can come after that, I think will help you be more motivated, and also making your list according to what you want to do first. That helps me a lot, because some days I don't want to start grant writing first. I want to write poetry, so I will write a poem, and then I will do 25 minutes of grant writing, and then I'll do a break, and then I'll go back to grant writing. And so that helps with my motivation, honestly. Okay, let's shake some more soil off of this. So I got a nursery pot, and it's like entirely too big for this pot, but it's okay. It needs space to grow, so this is the nursery pot it came in, and this is the nursery pot I'm replacing it with, because the roots are so long that the plant started growing out of its pot, and then the roots started uprooting from the soil, which is not a good thing. And so this is going to be helpful to give it more room to actually take root in the pot. Alright, so before I move on to the next question, I'm going to see what else needs to be pruned. Alright, so the next question, the cicadas again. So the next question is, how do you combat doubt and fear in relationship to creativity? So I talk about doubt a lot on my Instagram, on my YouTube, because I think it is the biggest thing that stops people from creating, honestly stops people from doing anything worth doing. And I think for me, especially in this last year, I would say honestly, this is like an everyday thing, combating doubt. It's gotten better because I've been able to develop more better habits that help me mentally, emotionally, and spiritually when I'm feeling doubtful about my ability to create, about my ability to write grants, about my ability to do anything sometimes. And I think what definitely helps me combat doubt is, which sounds cliche, but it is the biggest thing that helps me, which is prayer and silence. I think that recognizing that my ability to do anything creative, that my talents and the skills that I've acquired over the years comes from God. I think that how I'm wired has always been to be creative, and it's always been to help people and write, and it's something that I love doing and enjoy doing immensely. It's an amazing thing to be able to share why creativity matters to me and why I think it should matter to you. It's an amazing thing to be able to write grants that help nonprofits, that help kids, because I love working with kids, I love working with youth, and so being able to do that brings me joy. And I think when I'm feeling doubtful about my ability to do any of that, it's a direct correlation to sometimes feeling inadequate or feeling like I'm not worthy of doing the things that I do. And so combating doubt is a combination of prayer, a combination of waking up and committing to do something even if I feel like I can't, if that makes sense. Practically, it's silence. Sometimes if I'm feeling overwhelmed with doubt and overwhelmed with fear, I really have to just kind of still away and be by myself and be like, God, I don't feel like doing this, or I feel like I can't do this. And I journal it out sometimes. I think journaling is a great tool for me. My journaling is more like a prayer journal. So when I journal, it's usually me writing out my prayers that I'm like not saying out loud. And that's pretty much it. It's prayer, it's silence, it's sometimes taking a step away from creativity in general. Like, for example, I do a lot of poetry writing creatively. I do book writing, which has been a journey for me. And sometimes if I'm feeling doubtful about writing poetry, I will turn on music and I will just move, and that helps me. Being creative elsewhere helps me to be creative in the things that I'm feeling doubtful in, if that makes sense. If it's reversed and I'm feeling doubtful about creativity in relation to dance, then I will write, or I'll read a book, because sometimes reading other people's work helps me also feel creative. And so I think being inspired by other people helps me to not be doubtful, if that makes sense. I'm hoping I'm making sense. So another example would be when I'm feeling doubtful or fearful in terms of writing, I will read another poet. Like, for example, there was one time where I wasn't writing any poetry at all, but I was reading Mary Oliver, and that was very helpful for me, because being able to read someone else's work and to know that this person has been where I've been at a desk not being able to write somehow soothes me. So I enjoy that. And one thing I will also say that I've come to understand in my own creative journey is that doubt is normal. I will say that fear and doubt, although oftentimes kind of the same thing, I feel like fear is like fuel to the fire of doubt. I think fear is doubt on steroids, for a lack of a better example. And doubt is normal. I think in our lives, no matter what we do, we will experience doubt on some level. But I think that learning to move in the midst of doubt is what allows us to have a better, I guess, offense for doubt that comes in the future. I mean, in life, we are always going to have something we are striving to complete, and striving not in the sense of running ourselves ragged, but striving in the sense of we have goals that we set, we have desires and wants and things that we hope to create and put out in the world. And doubt is a part of always trying something new and trying something different. So when I'm feeling doubtful, I try not to beat myself up about it, because I know that doubt is normal and I don't have to be perfect. And I think doubt is sometimes the result of wanting things to be perfect and wanting to not mess up. And I have to tell myself that it's okay to mess up. It's okay to try something and it comes out terrible. It's okay to make mistakes, because if I am creating a standard for myself that mistakes shouldn't happen, that is a very dangerous thing to do, especially for a person like me who can overthink sometimes. And so combating doubt and fear is something that we will, I feel like, do often, but you get better at it when you understand that doubt is doubt. But when you put action to the things that you want to do, ultimately the doubt will dissipate at some point, hopefully. Hopefully. I hope that is encouraging and actually not discouraging to you. Let's see. Alright, so I have the plant in the pot. Now it's just putting soil around the plant. She seems so fragile. At this point, I just start using my hands instead of using a shovel because it's easier. And I have gardening gloves, but I have small hands, and sometimes that impedes upon me being able to feel the roots and feel the soil. So, the last question I have is from a really cool person, is what has being creative taught me? So I feel like this question is a really cool question. One, because I've decided to make creativity and helping other people learn about creativity and understand their own creativity a normal daily part of my life. And I will say that creativity has taught me a number of things. One of them being that creativity is how we're supposed to live our lives daily. As children, we grow up thinking creativity is relegated to specific times of the day. For example, in school, we have 8 hours of curriculum and academia, but we would have 30 minutes of recess, maybe 30 minutes of art, and then it's not until high school that you begin to actually be able to choose more artistic outlets of being able to express yourself, which is why in like every teen movie, children and teenagers are literally creating at home in their rooms because there is no outlet to do it anywhere else, where they spend most of their time, which is at a school in 4 walls. And I think that's one thing creativity has taught me, is that it's a daily thing, it's an everyday thing. It's not something that should be set aside only for 30 minutes of your day. If you are an accountant, there's creativity involved in that. A doctor, there's creativity involved in that. And there's the obvious, like, artists, dancers, writers, but there's creativity in every aspect of how we choose to live our lives, from what we choose to have for breakfast and how we make our coffee or our tea. And I've learned that creativity it's in everything, and it is something that God has given us to express ourselves and to better understand ourselves and to understand the world around us. When you think of Genesis, for example, where it talks about creation and how God created for 6 days out of the week and rested for the 7th, creativity is quite literally embedded into who we are as humans, as people. It's meant to bring us closer together. And yeah. I will say another thing that creativity has taught me is the importance of relationships and the importance of healing and mental health. I never really thought creativity was something that helped me be at peace with myself and at peace with other people, until I had an internship where the bulk of my time was pouring into other people on a consistent basis. And when it came time to recharge and reset, there was no time for that. And I remember I was with this internship for some time, and I remember I was praying about whether or not I should stay for another year. And I remember that I ended up leaving and was at complete and total peace with the decision, because I believed that was the direction I needed to take. And I remember as my time was coming to an end there, I remember consistently having conversations with God about wanting to be creative. I just wanted to write poetry, and I wanted to be able to help other people express their own creativity. That was where it started, was that internship in 2017 and 2018, where I was working with families and children pretty much every day and helping kids discover their own creativity, whether that was through math, which I'm not the best person to ask questions about math, but helping kids see the simple beauty and simple things, and helping a kid write a short story in 15 minutes, and then at the end of it him saying, oh my gosh, I didn't even know I could write a story. And I'm like, yes, you can write a story if you try. And I think creativity has taught me a lot about that, of connection with people, connection with myself, understanding that taking time for myself is not selfish, and also placing myself in a position to start conversations is a way to be in community, be in communication with other people. I will say it wasn't until I really started sharing about creativity that I began to have way more conversations with way more interesting people, because, and it was not just about poetry, but it was just simple things of someone would ask me what I do, and while I'm working at Subway, I'm like, oh, in my free time I also write poetry. And people are like, wow, I could never. Or in my job as as education art assistant, where I was literally working with 2-year-olds and painting with them and drawing with them, and parents would come in and sit next to their 2-year-old and be like, I used to draw when I was like 7. And I'm like, you can still draw. And seeing full-grown adults who are in their 30s, in their 40s, painting with their children, and then realizing for themselves that creativity is not something that they lost, but watching people rediscover a part of themselves that they thought they had grown out of or thought they would never ever see again has been a very cool experience. And then being able to do that with Pen of the Beloved, with my YouTube, with my 25 Days of Creativity Challenge has been an amazing thing. And it's just taught me that life is creative, relationships are creative, that God is creative, and that it all lends to the process of life in some aspect or some form. So, yeah. So it looks like Flurry is safely snug in her new pond. But I hope that this video has been enjoyable. I know that it's a little long. I don't even know if I'll be able to post all of this on Instagram, but it will be on my YouTube. So, yeah, let me know what you think, and if I answered your question. If you disagreed with how I answered the question, let me know, because I'm always open to discussing and talking with you guys, because you're amazing, and I'm just grateful to be able to do what I do and to have people want to learn more about their creative selves and how God created them to be creative. So I love you guys, stay creative, and buy a plant, because they're nice and they're fun to take care of when they're not infested with bugs. But bye.